Hello and welcome to the video lecture series brought to you by St. Andrews Institute of Technology and Management. My name is Ravinder. I am an assistant professor with ETC department and we are discussing the subject called Object Technologies and Programming in Java. Today we are going to see constructors. Yesterday we have talked about constructors, how we can automate the process of passing on the parameters, that is value of the properties, directly from your object, uh, or you can say directly to your object, so that each of those properties could be populated with the values, not just by calling each of the properties individually. So we're going to see that now, and how constructors will help us in that way. Okay. Okay. So what is a Java constructor? Now, Java constructor or any constructor in any language, since we are talking about OOPS, you can say that the constructor in OOPS is used to create the instance of the class. Now, remember in the last lecture we have used the keyword new. Okay, we have used the keyword new. Oh, let me try to open the IDE. So let's see if that particular example is still there. And if it is still there, then it's going to be a great help. Yeah, it is still there. So now you can see here that we have created the object of class dog by writing the type, that is dog, the name of the variable that is going to reference the object, that is dog1, and then we have used the new keyword to create the object, and after that we have they called this method like method like something. Okay, so this is this name of the class, that is dog, and after that we have these argument brackets that we have seen in the declaration of the methods. Okay, now we haven't created any method like this dog in the dog class, as you can see here. So from where this method comes from? Now this is actually the default constructor of class dog. You may not have put it in the dog class, but your compiler do put default constructor in your dog class, which doesn't take any arguments. Okay, so every time you create an object, the default constructor of that particular class has been called by the compiler. It's been called by the compiler. Okay, so constructor is basically used to create the objects of the class. Okay, so let's get back to the slides. Now constructors are almost similar to methods, except for the two things. First, its name is same as the class name. So that is why we cannot identify what we are doing here. Okay, because dog1 is of type dog. Okay, so it's, you can say that dog1 is a variable of type dog, and this dog with argument brackets is not actually the name of the class, but is actually the name of the constructor of class dog. And since the name of the constructor and name of the class is same, so it's like it's quite confusing here, so that what is what. Okay, but this is the type of the data, this is the name of the variable, new is the keyword used to create the object, and dog with argument brackets is actually the default constructor has been called, we have called the default constructor here. Now this default constructor will help us in creating the new object of class dog. Okay, so your object creation is basically by this. Your object has basically been created by this line, not by this line. This is just your normal variable declaration. In the few cases you have seen that int, let's say a, in this case the data type is not int, but it is of type dog. At the end of the day, you will see when we proceed future in the course ahead, you will see that subsequently all those data types are also written in a class. So that is why uh, everything almost everything that you're going to use is created as a class in Java. Not everything, but almost. Let's head back. Now the next thing is it has no return type. Now since it looks like it is a method but it has no return type, because it the mandate of constructor is not to return anything to you but to facilitate the process of object creation and the populating the properties of the class with values. That is the mandate of the constructor. In this particular example, you can see we are actually populating the values Anthony and Simon to the properties name of the dog class. Now this can be done automatically if we pass these properties to this constructor there. And obviously we have to make some changes in the dog class. We have to write the constructor here, and we'll see that in few minutes. But this population, or the population of the properties of the dog class, can be done automatically via the help of constructor if we just pass the values to the constructor at the time of the object creation itself. We'll see that in a few seconds. Now constructor has actually three types. That is your default constructor, your no argument constructor, and your parameterized constructor. Now default constructor is actually what we are seeing here. You can see we have listed the dog constructor, but if you came here, there is no dog constructor actually. There's been nothing written there like dog and argument brackets, and inside the braces you will see the body. There's nothing, because at the runtime, at the time of compilation, the compiler will actually put that your default dog constructor code, or insert that code automatically into your class, your dog class. So that is your default constructor. It will always be there whenever you are going to create a class. Okay, your compiler, if you haven't written your constructor in the class, in that case your default constructor will always be there, although it's not visible to you. But at the runtime, or at the time of the compilation, when this .java file is going to be converted to .class file, then at that time the compiler is going to insert that code for you. If you have written your constructor manually by yourself, then that default constructor will be overridden by your constructor. That is, your constructor body is or your constructor that you have written in the class will be given first preference to run. Okay, so this is how things works. So and then the parameterized constructor. The parameterized, no arguments in parameterized has only one difference, that that you have written the constructor by yourself in the class, but are you accepting some arguments or not? Like in the methods, we do accept arguments, we do accept the data, and on the basis of data, your method performs some task, and that is it. We're going to see the example of both of them in a few seconds. Now, features of constructors. Now, some of them we have already seen. Constructor has same name as the class. We have seen that. Constructor do not have any return type, not even void. Okay. Now constructors can be declared only in the public section of the class. Now, this is important. Your constructor can be declared only in the public section of the class. Now public is what? Public is your access modifier. And the last is the constructor is called automatically when the object of the class is created. We have seen that already. Okay, constructor has been called automatically. Okay. Now, why do we need constructors in Java? Now, constructors are very important as they are used to set certain properties and to perform certain tasks. Each object that is created is done using a constructor. Okay, so there will be no object without constructor. Now when an object is created using new keyword, the constructor of that class is called. We have already discussed that. So that is why we need constructor. We need constructors to create new object of a class. Now default constructors which initialize the object with default values. We have already seen that. Okay. The default constructors, we have seen that. Although it is not visible in your class, but at the time of the compilation, your compiler will insert it. Now, this is your example of constructor. Okay, so here is a class called student, and here's the body of the constructor. Now this is not your default constructor, this is the constructor that you have inserted in your code. So as you can see, the name of the class and name of the constructor is exactly same. And this is how your compiler is going to identify that this is the body of the constructor, and we have no return type associated with it. And you need not to insert public in front of the name of the constructor, because as we have already seen, constructors are only described or only declared in the public section of the class. Okay, now when you are going to create an object of the class, as you can, let me read out this first. Even this is a custom or parameterized constructor, as this is written by user. Okay, so if you haven't written this particular code in your class, then your compiler is going to insert exactly this particular code in your class at the time of compilation. But since that you have written it, this is not your default constructor, this is your custom constructor, and this is your no argument constructor. As you can see, your constructor argument bracket is empty, it is not accepting anything. This is your no argument constructor, and if it is going to accept any arguments, in that case that particular constructor will be called as parameterized constructor. Now the constructor will behave same as default constructor and initialize the instance variable to default value. Okay, so everything is default because we haven't mentioned anything. Now when you are going to create the instance of this class, that is student, so you will initialize a variable name s, which is of type student, and with the new keyword it creates object of class student, and then your constructor has been calls custom constructor of student class. So I think you have got the idea. We have already seen that at the beginning of the lecture, but I think you have got the idea what I am trying to say. Okay, so let's move on. We have already seen this. Let's try to implement this in our IDE in the yesterday's lecture in the example we have seen it yesterday in the last lecture. So now I'm going to insert my not default, but my custom constructor. So all I have to do is write the name of the class as it is, the argument brackets, which at this point I'm going to left it as empty, and that is it. Now this is my constructor. So I will comment it out as my custom constructor, or I would say no arguments, ARGS, no argument constructor, or I would write it as arguments because I think this is a key. Yeah, no arguments constructor. Okay, now we are going to improve this particular constructor. Now at this point of time it is doing just exactly as the default constructor that would have been inserted by your compiler at the time of the compilation have done. So this is not doing anything extraordinary than your default constructor, where at this point of time I'm just trying to make you people understand how you are going to initialize a constructor in your class, that is your custom constructor in your class. Okay, so let's move ahead. Now we came to the point where we can use multiple constructors in your class. Now first, before moving on, we'll just initialize a constructor with arguments. We're going to initialize the constructor with arguments. Okay. So as you can see, we have a class called college. Please ignore everything else and just focus on the line which I'm trying to point out with the cursor. This is the constructor college, and this is actually accepting two parameters, that is string name and int year. So we have a name variable, name parameter, which is of type string, and year parameter, which is of type integer. Okay, so this is the definition of your parameterized constructor, that is the constructor which actually accepts some of the parameters. So what I'm trying to do, what I'll do now is I will now make this no arguments constructor into a parameterized constructor. So I will do, please mind the spelling. So I will accept the values of, let's say, name first. So I will write string name. Okay, now we are going to write the body. Now this particular constructor now is actually accepting the argument called name. Now I want this name to be associated with the name, with the property called name we have declared in the first line, so that when we are going to start create the object of class dog and we are going to pass that name, it automatically get associated with the property, this particular property here. So I'm going to write here as dot name is equal to name. Now what we have done here, this dot name refers to this particular item. This keyword is used to call the object of the class in which you are now sitting. So by this keyword we are actually calling the object of class dog inside the dog class itself. Yes, it is possible. Okay, as you can see, this particular argument has a name equal to name, and this property also has same signature. So the compiler get confused. If I write like name is equal to name, it is going to get confused. So to remove that confusion, what we are doing is we are actually saying that the property of this class dog, which has been called as name, will be assigned with whatever is in there in this particular argument called name. Now it is not mandatory you to name to call the argument as same as the property name here, but this is a standard practice. You can always do this. You can always do this, and in that case, it's going to be easier for you. You can always do this. This is also very legal, very legal. You need not to take pain. But then again, this is not standard practice. This is not standard practice. Okay. This is what normally has been done around the world. While using the constructor, we always use this keyword. So this keyword actually used to call the object of the class in which you are now sitting in. So this is done. Now we have a parameterized constructor. Now we haven't seen in the main class how we are going to modify this. So now what we are going to do this is I am going to pass this Anthony here and this Simon in this particular. Okay, and now we don't need these two. Now what we have done here is that we have created a object of class dog, that is dog1 and dog2. We have called their constructors, and actually their constructors are required to, or they demand an argument that is of type string, and if you are not passing that particular string, then your code is not going to compile, because your constructor actually needs that particular argument to actually create your object. For the creation of this particular object of class dog at this stage, you actually have to pass this particular argument. Okay, now what has changed? Let's see, and let's try to run this now. What's the problem? What's the problem with this? dog string is undefined, why it is undefined. I think I haven't saved this one. Yeah, now it is. So let's try to run this and let's see in the console what has happened. Here it is. Now we haven't mentioned here like dog1 dot name, dog2 dot name. As we have passed the argument Anthony to the constructor, what is actually happening is inside the dog class that argument has been accepted by your constructor when it is going to be called at the time of the creation of the object, and this constructor is actually going to assign that argument to the property name of your class, which is actually been defined here, and this name has been used by your method eat and your method sleep. So that is it has saved lots of lines of code for you, a lot of time and a lot of space in your code and in your memory application. So this is how you can automate by the populating of your fields of your class by using the constructor. So this is your classic example of your parameterized constructor. So we have seen all the three types of constructor, that is your default, your no arguments, and your parameterized. Okay, now there's one more thing left. I don't know if we have time for that or not. No, it's getting too long. So tomorrow we're going to see the constructor chaining and method overloading. We'll see that because they are one and basically you can say they are one and the same thing, kind of the same thing, but we are going to see that in the next. Thank you.